All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Black Side Show. Today we're here with Micha Martine, former Navy weapons specialist. And today our guest is Col John Burke, former U.S. Army colonel, served in Iraq and Afghanistan, and there's not one piece in the world that he hasn't been to. So we are very glad to have him here. And today we are talking about the Ukraine and the Russian misinformation within our country. This is something, Micha, tragic for us, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Us veterans, man, we can argue about politics all we want, but in the last few days, this has been like really crazy, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's waking a lot of people up. A lot of people have been pushing this agenda, and all of a sudden you're watching the country you love is being controlled by Russian psyop, and it blows your mind.
Yeah, it's horrible because there's really not a whole lot that you can do about it other than just share the truth.
And it's you know what, that's what it is that you got to take your politics, put it in the box, and look what you're facing here. And it blew my mind, man, how this country went in 72 hours. People could not point the Ukraine in the map. And in 72 hours, people were saying the Ukraine is all bad, the Ukraine is all Nazis, the Ukraine is so and so. And you just kind of wonder where all this information come from.
Right.
And when you lead to it as a professional, me, Col Burke, who is our guest today, had the experience of working close with the enemy, working in the same room, understanding how they run their agenda. This is insane to watch that 72 hours, all Americans are started saying the same exact narrative that Putin wants you to say. And through who? Through the influencers. The people who came out of nowhere, and now all of a sudden they found themselves to be patriot, American-loving, and here they are changing the public opinion within like that in hours.
Who are these influencers that you talk about?
Influencers are in social media, man. Most of these people are people who have never served in the military. I never seen them during my days, in Col Burke's days. I've been, I don't know, maybe their love for America wasn't as strong back then, but all of a sudden they found themselves all like patriots, loving Americans, and all of a sudden they're pushing Putin agenda. Our own Congress member, Madison Cawthorn, who came out and called Zelensky a thug, same video got played in Russian TV 5 times in the same day. So now let's go to Col Burke. Col Burke, welcome to our show. It has been a while since I've seen you, and this is my first time in my life seeing you with the gray hair.
With hair at all, dude. With hair at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here. What you're just talking about just encompasses a lot of different things that when taken singly, you say, wow, that's messed up. But these are all operating in synergy with each other. I'm an old guy. I remember the Cold War from the beginning. My father was when the Cold War started. So I grew up looking to fight the Russians. And part of that was disinformation goes both ways. So then you grow up, you enter the information age. Back in the day, I was reading a newspaper, reading a book. Walter Cronkite's talking to me on the news. I was pretty sure what he said was truthful. Well, fast forward 40 years, and we've got personal computers, cameras, video phones, podcasts, social media of 20 different varieties, and growing incrementally daily. There's so many ways for information to get just shoved right at you. Whether you're receiving or not, you can't avoid it.
True. Back in our day, that would be so much difficult, right? To put something, to change your thinking. That was pretty difficult to get to.
Well, think in our day, when we first met, we weren't using Facebook in Iraq.
Yeah,
we weren't
true.
using Twitter.
Yeah.
We used those old file arachnophones. So we had some pretty focused information. And whether you realized or not, we ran a lot of information operations out of the ministry, dude.
Yeah.
we were putting information out.
Yeah.
Just to see where it went. And then once we found where it went, we could manipulate subjects. So what you're seeing here is an environment 15 years later, and the technology has changed exponentially, and the Russians are good at this.
It is.
Half of their best coders are in the Ukraine now, or from Ukraine.
Yes, true.
Because Ukraine had an incredible software industry that not a lot of people really know much about, but a lot of intellect there. And a lot of it driving these operations. And the Russians traditionally are very good at this.
And would you agree on the statement that I said this in my social media? Like, I have a lot of following in social media, on Instagram specifically. I said, I have never thought Russia has our underwear down in this country. Like, would you agree on that?
Yeah, well, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
I'm part of the last of that generation that grew up where Russia was my traditional enemy, right?
True.
Everybody's got a traditional enemy, Billy across the street, whatever, your nemesis, right? Well, ours was Russia. That was me. But now we've had all the stuff going in KFOR, in Serbia and stuff. Then you get into Iraq, Afghanistan, where now you've moved over several decades, several conflicts in which information warfare was used extensively to the max, and you're at a stage now where the fighter pilots back in the day used to call it information overload. That's the whole goal of when you design a fighter aircraft these days. They design software you can target by turning your head. It's intuitive. You can lurch, click your eye, and it pops and pushes a button for you so your hands are always on the stick. Very much allows you to focus on the target. But if you let all the sensors jump at you with all their individual data, it crushes pilots and they can't make a decision. Right now, Americans, everybody, you're getting information from Russia, the left, the right, the center,
China, everybody's lining up, literally.
And the best part is, with social media, you have self-actualizing groups who 10, 15 years ago could never have gotten together because the media didn't exist. But now it does. So back in the day, I'm going to make a bad joke, but we'll see how it plays. Back in the day, if you had one clown in a town, it's no big deal, right?
Yeah.
Well, now they hop on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Social media. And now all these clowns in towns are getting together regularly, and now you got an insane clown posse.
It is. I agree. And I think what scares me the most is you lived that era during that time where Russia was your enemy, as you mentioned. Did you guys have Americans who were pro-Russia at the time?
Oh, yeah. There is.
Okay.
Let me I'll use the term demographics, okay? And demographics just describe slices of what a population looks like, all right? There are always a demographic. Probably single digits, certainly, maybe low double digits. It says there's a group of people that like this position, whatever it is, central, left, right, extreme or not, for the government, against the government. And that's a kind of baseline that has existed. You go back centuries, okay? There's always going to be those, right?
Yeah.
But they've never been able to really get together much, so they never had much of an impact.
Yeah.
The crazies had a limit. And I'll use the word crazies, although probably it's, not an affirming term or whatever you'd want to call it, right?
Yeah.
But it's the way I view it, because they're not acting rationally or based on what I would consider to be reasonable fact or a reasonable assumption of fact. So all these people get together. Now they've generated their own ecosystem. Now you've got a bad actor like Russia, because all these people before aren't really bad people, okay?
True. Mm-hmm.
They just have certain thoughts that might separate them from you or I or Michael here,
And
right?
I agree on that statement. I still think conservative people in this country are good people. They love this country. However, I feel that the majority now is falling for the propaganda.
This propaganda, though,
a Republican conservative.
It seems like these influencers are relatively on the same page.
Yeah.
Do you think that they're getting their information all from one source, like they're being fed, or do you think they're just parroting each other?
No, they're repeating. They're being fed, and that's exactly what I mentioned.
Fed.
So who's feeding them? Do we know?
Yeah,
There is a line.
Influencers, social media influencers.
But
That's
where are they getting that at the top, though? Do you know?
I mean, that's the question, is when you look at all these social media influencers who are now, like, Colonel Burke might not be on Instagram. This is not within his age era. But if you look when you look right now on Instagram, which I've been looking through, that it was a lot of individual who popped in the last 4 or 5 years during this, elections and all this chaos that's going on, there's a lot of these outspoken influencers that came out of nowhere, started promoting, and the way they tapped into their this audience, which is the conservative audience, is by mocking the rival. So if I want to get your attention, I can go out and make fun of far left people. And if I go make fun of far left people, most likely you're going to think I'm on your side. And that's how they get you first. And then these are the same individual that eventually started pushing the Russian fan club agenda, which is the straight Russian psyop agenda was being pushed on the American people. And the majority of the American people started repeating the same exact agenda that's been presented to them. And it made me feel, it was my first time in my life to be afraid of something. That they built this strong dome psychologically around themselves, on these influencers. If you would call out the influencer, they already have an accusations ready for you. If you would call them out and say, look, man, this is completely a lie. I don't believe in this. This is what Putin is pushing on us. They will immediately label you saying, well, you are a liberal. You are a conservative. You are a far right. You are a racist. You are this. You are that. So this dome that they built around that, even if you present the truth to people, which I think Colonel Burke is going to agree on that. Even if you present the fact to people, they choose not to look at it.
Right.
Because they're so
labeling. That labeling is a very good tool, because as soon as I label you this or that, I can now silence you, because anything you say is just because of you're this, you're that.
Exactly. Right? And Colonel Burke, maybe you're not aware of this, but you know, most of these influencers, which I looked into their backgrounds, looking into who they really are, where they come from, it just happened to be all people who started speak out of nowhere. And it just makes me curious. Does these people really have nothing to do in their life to all they do all day long for the last 5 years and making fun of their rivals?
Pretty much. It's funny because when I look at you, Hamody, I know you can pass a citizenship test because you did.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So regardless of where you stand, left, right, center, whatever, you understand the American government and the way things work and the ethos we're supposed to look toward, right?
Yeah.
Traditional patriotism, as I would define it, that I grew up with, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not sure how we got to this stage, but I have a concern that we don't view the entity of the United States as a culture, as a group, regardless whether you be thick, thin, brown, white, whatever. Our country's gone through big changes in 200 years. So not agreeing with changes across the board, that's why I was a conservative, I like things the way they are. But the reality is, with all the information going out from, as you said, people who maybe don't even have an agenda, they're just following a flow, right? You see people like Ted Cruz the other day during the Supreme Court confirmation, and regardless of how you stand on that, I thought it was very disrespectful to her that he was hitting Twitter right after to see how many clicks he got for his, very distasteful questions. Questions that you never would have heard 20 years ago at all. Antonin Scalia was confirmed like 98-3 or 98-2, 97-3, something like that, right? Crazy numbers. The Democrats all voted for him. So you've got a complete paradigm shift, and a lot of it is related to how people connect on social media. And it boils down to, how do you responsibly consume this deluge of information? Because you can choose to receive it, you can choose not to receive it, but it's there pumping at you like a fire hose. And it goes back to, you want to check your sources, you want to double check things, maybe look at a different source. I look at different media. There's several bits of media I won't look to, both left and right and center. But I like the BBC, I like the Guardian, I like PBS, I like Al Jazeera. Since 2005, they have great news. And it's the East China Sea National or something like that, right? The Hong Kong Daily News. Well, that used to be good. Once you start seeing all these other bits of news, you can then start sifting it all to determine, okay, now I think I have an idea of what truth is. And what Russia's doing is a series of operations that go back as far as Brexit and before, okay? Because there's no doubt that Russia was deeply involved in supporting Brexit. Why? It diminished England, or Great Britain, and it really diminished NATO, okay? Wow. And that's a big thing for Russia, or as we would know Russia as Vladimir Putin. Because Russia is a word, it hasn't been Russia for decades. It's been Vladimir Putin for 20 years.
For 20 years,
And it will be until he's no longer breathing, because he won't be able to give up power.
He changed the law where he could be in power for the rest of his life.
Yes. Yeah. Constitutional amendments, they're great when you can rubber stamp them.
Yeah.
But he used the system.
Yeah.
So now you've got tremendous information operations going. The Russians have a goal. They'd like to destabilize NATO. Putin has said he would like to restore the pre-Berlin Wall borders. He'd like to take back Poland, East Germany, everything.
And that's what I thought. This is what I told people. I told people that Putin had 10 days of plan to take over the Ukraine, and day 11 was going to be manipulating Poland. And I told that. And it's like people tell you like, he's just going to attack the Ukraine because now they're representing NATO and they're a threat to him. And I said this, this is not about the Ukraine. This is about Putin conquering the continent of Europe. And that's exactly how I felt about it. Because look at India just signed a deal buying Russian S-35s from Putin. The thing is, Putin is on his way to become a world power. And all these people in this country are so angry against you because you're fighting against Putin. You're trying to stop Putin. And I don't care who is in the White House right now, whether it's a Republican or Democrat. Somebody has to do something to stop this guy from moving forward with his power. Right, Colonel?
Exactly. I mean, Putin right now is the most dangerous person in the world, next to maybe Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, true. I agree on that statement.
And he's not going to go away. And the big thing about Putin is he doesn't play three-dimensional chess. He plays poker.
Yeah.
Okay, that's for Garry Kasparov. And everything he does, he's already told you he's going to do it earlier. And he does what he says he's going to do.
Yeah.
So the time to nut up and stop him is right now. And the Ukrainians are just, what you're seeing now is 20 years of NATO training, U.S. 10th Special Forces Group in the Ukraine, California National Guard teaching Ukrainian Air Force pilots how to do air defense operations and counter air defense SEAD operations. There's been a lot of work. General Hertling, whom you know.
Mark Hertling, which I had like dinner in his house when you sent me to Germany back in 2005.
Right. He just wrote a great article that talked about his 30 years of experience in Europe as a lieutenant with the Russians, how they did things. A couple wars later, he's a battalion commander in Russia. Then he's a division commander in Russia.
And he was in Europe for a decade. When I met him there, he was already a star general in Germany. Yeah.
He spent, I'd like to say, 3/4 of his career in Europe.
Yeah.
So his experience, and he was a commander Europe, commander U.S. Army Europe, commander NATO.
Yeah.
So he was the guy, and he saw the beginning of the Ukrainian training. So he could see ground force truth. What we're seeing now is, and it's been kind of propaganda on both sides. The Ukrainians suck. These guys are no good. Back and forth on both sides. But now we're really seeing where the rubber meets the road. And I'm seeing a lot more decisive action from the Ukrainians than I am the Russians. And I'm really curious to see now what the internal propaganda reaction is going to be from Putin, from Russia. Because at some point, they just can't put them all in jail. They got to turn their own hearts and minds, or else it's going to become a serious problem for Putin. And I just have to smile because the Ukrainians are just kicking so much ass. And the more I read about people,
I think they showed the world. What courage is like. I mean, seriously, they turned this place into mini Fallujah for Putin.
They have become, in Hertling's own words, they have become us.
True.
Okay, they're not far off from where we are. Period. Or our combat vets. You know, and considering they've had groups and units that have been in combat for the last 8 years in Donbass.
What is your thought, Colonel, what's your thought on the propaganda that came out and it started like saying that the Nazi claims and that this is all bad people, Ukraine is not any better. And I'm aware of, as based on my experience, that I'm aware of a lot of it is Putin agenda. So I actually spoke to a Ukrainian in a safe house in Poland, and I asked that question. I said, hey, most Americans are claiming that, there is Nazis among the Ukraine, that they're not any better, they're terrible people. And this is the way she answered me. She was a Catholic woman who voted for Zelensky. And this is what she said to me. She said, yes, the Azov fighters, the Azov brigade that we have, she said, we have a bunch of messed up people that were in the borders of Russia. And she said, these were criminals, were bad people, which a lot of them are really racist, really bad, have done things in their life. And look, we have those here in this country. Sure. We're not any perfect. But she said, we have these people, and Zelensky decided, instead of these people on the road doing things, decided to form a brigade or a fighting force of these individuals. Who did this? Iraq did this. When ISIS took over 30% of Iraq, we had to recruit some of the militia criminals that we actually me and Colonel Burke fought against. Wow. And we had to put them back to the front line. So this is war. And you got to do what you got to do. You got to utilize your sources. And she said, these people, these criminals, have one thing in common, is they hate Russia. And wouldn't this be a smart move? Wouldn't you do the same thing if you were Zelensky? And instead of these people causing chaos on the road, I'll just form them as a brigade, pay them whatever, their $3 a month. And she said these are the individuals beside the Mansour Dudiev brigade, which is the Muslim Chechens who hate Russia, because now there is two different Chechens who are fighting in the line. There is the pro-Putin Chechens who are coming from Chechnya, and there is the anti-Putin Chechens who's been living in the Ukraine. And she said, these are the two individuals that are actually holding the line in Kyiv.
So it's almost like they're harnessing that evil group and pointing them towards Russia.
Literally. Well, here's what's happening, okay? And I can tell you, as a former military commander, the idea of, and we saw this in Iraq because you were there, standing right next to me when we looked at these guys. These militia groups, call them, that form up their own battalions or brigades, and what their ultimate impact was on a fight. Yeah. Based on equipment, training, how they formed it, etc. And the word out of Ukraine is, we haven't seen fighting like this since World War II. Okay, these guys are in serious high-intensity combat, and the Ukrainians are winning because the Russians can't take it. Yeah. Plus, they're running out of food, fuel, water, and that's going to happen in Phase 2 here in Donbass. The Russians are, right now, and you think the Chechens are a problem. What you don't see, guys, is Russia right now is bringing forces in from the eastern military districts, okay? Yeah. Trains are coming in, flatbeds with trucks and MREs, and passenger cars with the combined arms armies in the eastern military districts. Now, these are all Asians. Okay, you don't see a lot of white Russians out in Asia. There's a percentage, but it's cheaper to keep it more local for the majority. Yeah. So these Asian fucks are coming in, and they don't like Ukrainians. They don't like Caucasians.
I see where he's going.
They're going to come in with a whole different attitude. They're not going to be like, oh, my buddy, you were my buddy the other day. Now we're at war. Fuck this. I'm going back to Russia. You won't see as much of that. The problem is Russian training has now been revealed to be not training even as we know it, Hamody. You and I could probably assemble a troop of Boy Scouts and give them rifles and have better effect than a trained Russian infantry squad. Yeah. Hands down. Fuck, you and I alone could be better than a Russian infantry squad. Even at my age,
Their reputation, I gotta say, their reputation as the second most powerful country in the world has been in the shit lately. Mm-hmm.
Well, you always like to preach to your people, honor the threat, right? Honor the threat. Don't ever make the mistake of underestimating the bad guy because,
truly,
you never know, right?
Me and you saw this in Iraq. Personnel are more dangerous than vehicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now we know. And then when you factor in all the things that the Russians don't do, operational planning, staff work, all that kind of heavy shit that makes the army move.
Yeah.
And their army doesn't move. They're missing a requirement for thousands of trucks. And that bridge you saw that they blew up today.
Yeah.
The Russian army works off a bridge, off of railheads.
Yeah.
You cut the rail lines, now they're all on trucks.
Yeah.
And the Russian army, each combined arms army, at a minimum, is probably short 1,000 trucks.
Yeah.
You got a half a dozen combined arms army in the fight.
Yeah.
Just to give you some math, right? It takes 50 to 90 trucks to lift one salvo of rockets for a combined arms army. That's 50% of their lift if the combined arms army has a 90-mile supply train.
Wow.
That's 50% of their lift. That means food, water, gas. Oh, the artillery for the 4 air defense and the 6 tube artillery battalions. You know the Russians, they like to pump out their rounds, right?
Yeah.
So how much of that is being used for fuel, water, food? Because I don't know about you, but I get real worried when I run out of food and armored vehicles suck fuel at an incredible rate standing still. And what we're finding is the Russians don't have a lot of infantry in there. And if you don't have a lot of grunts in there ready to take some damage and deal the hurt back and take care of your tanks, because the tanks will take care of you, but you got to have the grunts out there. And the Russians aren't doing it. And I don't see them changing that.
Yeah,
at all.
Colonel Burke, do you think it sounds like it's rapidly falling apart and deteriorating, this kind of push into Ukraine? And it sounds to me like Putin didn't plan this last minute. He's been planning this for quite some time.
Switch the mic, Brett. Other way. Look, your eyes on the computer, Brett.
It was on him.
Do you think that Putin underestimated the resistance and he thought that he was just going to roll in there and they would just all lay down and surrender?
Putin made a series of mistakes, okay, Michael? And I'll start from the top. When you conduct something like this, you want to have a strategic objective, okay? So Putin chose 2. 1, the decapitation of the Zelensky government in the first 2 days, okay? Those were the combined air assaults into the 2 airports north and south of Kyiv, okay? Those failed miserably. Now, the second strategic objective was that land bridge between Donbas and the Crimea. Okay, that economically strangles Ukraine, and it provides a reinforcement point for Russia now to build up like Kaliningrad in the northern part of Poland. Okay, so what he chose was to do both at the same time, and the problem was, as we know now, there was no combined commander. Russia just announced their new combined commander, the dude who did Syria. They didn't have that guy before, so every combined arms army basically went the way their lieutenant general said go. There was no coordination. So the initial shock from the Ukrainians, they survived that because the Russians were all fucked up.
Yeah.
You know? Then you factor, they attacked in spring. Who the fuck attacks, what do the Russians call it, Rushdalka?
Yeah.
It's the season of the mud.
Yeah.
You know? Why do you go then? Because the only one who benefits in the mud, wait, are the Ukrainian special forces and their infantrymen with those light anti-tank missiles and anti-aircraft missiles.
I gotta say, they made Al-Qaeda look too good in Iraq.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
It is shameless.
Yeah.
So the problem that I have is, given all that, the civilians involved, they're taking a beating. And there's going to be tens of thousands more killed because Putin doesn't care.
Yeah.
So
casualties are scary within the Ukrainians, man. I got to tell you, I watch it daily. And
I predict it's going to harden the Ukrainians' resolve. Because here's the deal. Let's go back to demographics, okay? I'll go back to World War II because that's Putin's reference, Nazis, okay? Here's the demographic. At the start of World War II, Ukraine had a population of about 44 million. Now, this is after about 6 million were murdered by Stalin. They were called the kulaks during the farm collectivization. Okay? It occurred mainly in the Ukraine. Why? Because the Ukrainians have always wanted not to be Russians. And in fact, at every opportunity, to include 1917, after the Red Revolution, they opted to be my own country until Joe said, fuck that, right? We'll make you our primary partner in the new Russia. Okay? And, because they do have a lot of shared history, Russia and Ukraine, hey, we'll get together. So after the murders, they had about 44 million people. We know about 4.4 million people supported the Germans. We know about 400,000 Ukrainian men served in all the different paramilitary and military formations within the Ukraine, etc. They weren't used very far outside the Ukraine. It was mostly internal stuff, and that includes that weird SS division and a bunch of other groups. But 400,000 is a big network. It's estimated between 5.5 and 7 million Ukrainian men served in the Red Army in World War II. They fled east, joined the Russian army, and fought the Germans. So look at percentages. What's 5 or 7% to 44 million, right?
Yeah,
You're talking 10%. What's 400,000 of 4.4 million?
Yeah. And that kills this claim of calling them Nazis.
Exactly.
Kills it.
That kills the claim.
Yeah.
And the next time the Ukrainians had a chance to say, we're going to vote for independence, they did. They did.
But see, Colonel, this is what great point that you're bringing in, is most Americans are not informed, very misinformed within the history of things. They listen to what so-and-so on social media, who is a 24-year-old, telling them that the Ukraine is Nazis. And they are stuck in that. They're not looking into the fact. And it's almost the people that are pushing the Russian agenda is sure that the people are not going to bother to go know the facts, that most people just fall for it. So, like, how do we get these Americans who are good Americans fall? How do we prevent them from falling for the foreign propaganda? It doesn't have to be only Russia. At this point, we are exposed.
Let's call it counter-programming. Okay, and I was reading I don't remember whether it was Eric Edelman or a gentleman named Jonathan V. Last, but I read a paper and it talked about demographics and what they listen to. Okay, and in our case, they had the left and right demographics in the United States. Okay, and they were looking at where do you get your information from? Okay, and on the right side of the table, and this isn't saying that everybody does, but they found a solid proportion of those viewers, they listen to Fox and their local cable, which in most of the U.S. is Sinclair. Okay, now on the other side, they're listening to usually a minimum of 3 different sources. CNN, MSNBC, CBS, BBC, whatever. The more the merrier. And what they found was they took a group of Republicans and they paid them to watch CNN 7 hours a week for a number of weeks. Okay, and then they talked to them about what they viewed, and they didn't say it, but I'm sure they pre-questioned them and look at the changes, if any. And they detected noticeable changes. Now, they weren't saying, oh my God, a whole demographic just saw the light and changed their mind, right? But they saw change because people were exposed to different forms and sources of information.
Wow.
Colonel
That's
Burke,
what you have to do.
I want to rewind to something that you said earlier. You said the time to stop Putin is now. We need to nut up and take care of him.
Putin's on a timeline.
President Biden today, in fact, just 3 hours ago, gave an address. He was talking about gas prices, and he accused Putin for the first time that we know of genocide. That's the first time him using that word, because up until now his administration has avoided using that term genocide. Do you think that was a mistake on his part using that word, or is he trying to be a little bit tougher?
3 days ago, I would have said it was a mistake. But what I found out 2 days ago, and let's go back to Vladimir Putin's getting ready to use chemical weapons, okay?
Yeah.
We now know that was an information operation to basically cause Putin to lose face, because he should have had that jump, and it made him look like shit, because now we're all prepared for chemical weapons. So, he can say I'm going to use them, but we already said, we know you're going to use them, right? So it was us playing him. So now, 3 days ago, I'd have said, that's a stupid thing to say, because genocide's a pretty large term. You're killing tens of thousands of people. I get that. Genocide, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions. We may get there.
Yeah.
Okay? But I don't know that I could define that now. So I don't want to throw the word around. But, we're seeing a lot of dead bodies, and Russia has a bad history of killing a lot of people. Like I said, they killed upwards of 6 million Ukrainians in the late 30s.
Wow.
You know, so.
And there's something interesting about this. People now are claiming that. People now are claiming that, there's war crimes are committed on both sides, and they try to compare the Russian war crimes to our war crimes in Iraq. I mean, look what we had in Haditha with the Marines. These Marines went to trial, were charged. I hate to hear that. I hate hearing that people are trying to compare the U.S. military to the Russian military of what happened in Iraq. I'm like, if someone committed a war crime in Iraq, I bet you they went to trial. These guys are plowing through Ukrainians on the daily basis. And you can never compare that to Iraq, because in Iraq, we had rules of engagement.
Mm-hmm.
The Russians are not following a damn thing, not even the Geneva Convention.
Are there innocent civilians being harmed on both sides? We know about the Ukrainians.
No, because there are no civilian Russians that are involved.
Is Ukraine doing any counterstrikes inside of Russia, or are they only being defensive?
No, the Ukrainians are only defending their land. They don't have the leverage to get into Russia.
So they are not counter-striking?
There are zero Russian civilians are being harmed, man.
Okay.
It's all Ukrainian civilians.
Wow.
And that's what people don't realize.
They're being deported, which is a bad sign, because now they become hostages. People don't understand, and there's a little trivia history that may make you sick to your stomach, but the point is it'll teach you about real politics, okay? Right after World War II, we're doing accounting of all the missing in action. American, British, French, whatever, right, for the war. Americans had somewhere between 30 and 50,000 airmen in prisons in stalags in Germany. Russia came in, got all the eastern stalags, okay?
Right.
Now, at the end of the war, we wanted our guys back.
Don't use number two a lot. Sorry,
and,
go ahead.
The Russians said, well, we want our guys back too, because we had Russian prisoners that we'd liberated, and they didn't want to fucking go back. So, because we're not that kind of people, we didn't put them on buses and throw them back across the border to Joe, where they were going to get a bullet in the back of the head. No, but what it meant was we left potentially 30 to 50,000 American servicemen to die in Russia after World War II, because it benefited both parties politically to let it die.
Wow.
So what I'm saying is real politics is playing here, because this is the biggest war since World War II. We haven't seen shit like this, nor the potential to get bigger. And Putin's on a timeline. He's older than me. And in Russia, if he were any other guy, he'd have been dead 10 years ago of a cardiac arrest due to smoking and drinking.
Yeah.
You know? The average age over there is nuts. So he's got a timeline because he needs to achieve it now. He's got goals. And
what do you think his ultimate motive, Colonel Burke? What do you think his ultimate motive? What do you think he wants?
He's going to become the greatest Russian historical figure ever.
And that's exactly what I've been saying.
Ever.
He wants to be.
This is historic. This is his legacy, and this is the kind of thing people will die for.
And it's worse than Hitler.
Die for it.
Worse than Hitler, because you're dealing with a former KGB officer.
Do you think he's healthy? I've heard some rumors that maybe he pulled the trigger on this now because he's having some health issues or something.
He's healthy as a dog, man. This guy is a black belt in judo. He works out. He is very athletic. This is not an American politician who is like old as hell and barely can move and can only talk smack. This guy can cause damage. He's a former spy.
Right.
That's what you're dealing with.
I think he surrounded himself with a bunch of dickheads because, A, they're deathly afraid of him. I mean, I watched that YouTube video of the deputies meeting he had where he just harangued everybody like crazy. He was belittling. I mean, you and I were in a few meetings like that in Iraq.
Yeah.
And, where you're embarrassed for the person getting beat down on.
Yeah.
And if that's the president, if that's the leader of your country, what does that do to you and your morale and your loyalty?
Exactly. And I saw that video you're referring to is the spy chief of Russia was too scared to say his words.
Do you think that part of the
failures from top down?
Yeah. Do you think the part of these failures of this invasion, because obviously it has not been very successful yet, other than the massive civilian casualties, but do you think this part of the failure is based on him being surrounded by yes men that just tell him what he wants to hear because they're afraid to tell him the truth? There
has been rumors that he's not being told the truth. They're not telling him the truth as generals because they're scared to tell him the truth. And
So he's almost like in a own little bubble.
Yeah, there are a lot of information about him losing his cool in the last few days because they are not telling him the truth. And this happened with Saddam too in Iraq.
Okay.
Because Saddam did the same exact psychology, used the same thing, where people were too afraid. Believe it or not, Saddam didn't even believe that there were Americans in the borders of Baghdad in 2003 until he saw one. Because his generals were lying to him, told him, we got this. And his generals are lying to Putin. They are losing badly in the Ukraine. And I can assure you that the damages for the Russians is bad. But we can never end. See, the Russian military, it's not strong enough. The Russian intelligence, it's a different department. They got a different grip. I mean, watch how smart they are. Watch how they're calming their people down. They calm their people down with playing American media personnel and American politicians attacking the Ukraine. What was that message about? Why were they playing Madison Cawthorn video calling Zelensky a thug 5 times in one day? 5 times. They played Tucker Carlson videos 5 times in one day. And because they want to tell their people, we got this. We might be losing the war here, but we still got this.
Mm-hmm. And the Russian citizens are really feeling the pain right now, right? With
they do.
Credit cards being shut off, and
however, they're not really hurting because the ruble currency just went up. I don't know if anybody knew that. Just went up. So they're really not as hurting as we think they are.
Do you think they have access to cash, though?
It's not the access to cash. It's just that they are making deals right now. They just signed a deal with India, and India is supposed to be an ally of the United States.
And
I would disagree with you on that, Hamody.
Yeah, right. They're not anymore, obviously.
When I was in Afghanistan, I got a real good education on that end of the world's politics because I dealt at the governmental level.
Yeah.
And no, they are not our allies. They're not really a commercial competitor, an economic competitor, but they want to be the king of their region. They have their own, Modi has his own aspirations.
Yeah, they got Pakistan to worry about.
Yeah. In Pakistan, that's a nest of snakes right there, and I know those guys personally. I've met Imran Khan.
Yeah, when it comes to Pakistan, you got to prepare your back because they're going to stab you somewhere.
I mean, it's crazy, but going back to what was said earlier, they're feeding information operations on our population for an effect, right?
Yeah.
They're feeding information operations on their population for an effect. The Nazis are attacking us. What do you think the Russian people are getting fed every day?
Yeah.
The same shit RT's pumping out across the Atlantic.
And
it's
the same propaganda, pretty much, and I agree on that.
Yeah. I mean, thank God for 2 things. That it was an inept plan executed by fucking clowns.
Yeah.
You know, who'd have thunk? They were, I mean, I'm embarrassed for the military in general because fucking armies like that, we should have just washed them away.
Yeah.
You know? It makes me sad because at one point the Russian army was kind of feared.
Yeah.
You know? They were thought to be the guy, but now,
and now you see them.
Never again.
Yeah, now you see who they really are.
So what is the ultimate goal to this misinformation campaign as it applies to the U.S. specifically? Is it to
break up in NATO? To
prevent us from getting involved?
Yes,
no,
I agree.
They want to break up NATO. Okay? If Marie Le Pen comes into the office, she's going to try and extract France for sure. And France wasn't always ever a part of NATO. If the Republicans take control, he said it, so there's probably going to be a move to get us out of NATO because he said he'd do it, okay? So you have to honor the man for what he said. It's information operations. Brexit really crippled Britain.
Yeah.
You're not hearing about it because you're hearing about all kinds of other flutter that's in the air. And it's like chaff. It's designed to deflect and distract, to get you looking at something else, right? You know, the shell game, right? Where's the marble?
Right.
That's what they're doing. And as long as you're looking at the marble, you're not focusing at your enemy's eyes, whom you need to kill. Because what do you look at when you're going to shoot somebody, Hamody? You look at their fucking hands.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not listening to what you're saying. I'm just focusing on whether your hands are going to come up. We're not doing that, and that's the purpose. They want us so off ground, looking and shifting and absorbing different information that's a flow of positive, negative, true, false, etc., because it benefits them. And the ultimate goal, strategic goal, is to break NATO up. Because Russia can't do what it wants to do while NATO is strong.
And why do you think they're trying to prevent America from getting involved? By trying to convince its people that you shouldn't be involved.
Because they can. Unfortunately, they found a demographic, and I was a Reagan and a George Will Republican for decades.
Yeah.
I joined because of Reagan. The Marine Corps used to say our regular commission, Republican, conservative, Roman Catholic.
Yeah.
Right? John Allen, John Kelly, Mattis, all those guys. So that was a demographic. The Russians are very good at this shit, and they want us separated. So they found a demographic in the U.S. that distrusts. I don't say trust Russia, but they distrust the other side so much that they've closed themselves off to veins of information.
I agree on that, and that's what I said earlier. It's by mocking your rivals. It's that they found this division here in this country politically, and they tapped into it. Because if you go right now and you're trying to present fact to one side, they're so blind because they hate the other side within their own country, which makes sense. Why some Americans were literally stating on TV, on national TV, I'd rather have Putin run this country than a Democrat does. Wow. I am a person that is a conservative. I don't know what you voted on, but I have a red line where I stop. I wouldn't hate Americans to the point that I'm willing to stand with China or Russia against them. That is insanity.
No, absolutely not.
That is like being radicalized just like an Al-Qaeda fighter. You're not any different. So that's what's so scary is that here Americans had so much hate for one another that it's easier for foreign intelligence to come over and to try to influence you because you had such a hard time trusting your people. So I do believe, look, nobody should trust the government, right? Nobody should rely on the government. But however, when it's a foreign intelligence entity wants you to stay untrusting on your government, that's when I really stop. I mean, look, whether you voted for Biden or not, whoever is in office right now needs to do something about this, needs to send money, needs to fund. And you have Americans coming in saying, we should have spent this $14 billion we sent to the Ukraine here on America. And let Putin conquer the continent? What do you think is going to happen to your American interests?
Right.
What do you think is going to happen to our allies? What's going to happen to NATO? It's like people have no idea. This is not against Republican or Democrat. This is against the American interests in general.
Right.
Putin is a threat to us as an Americans.
Right. This is 1941, 1939, depending on when you think the war started.
Yeah.
This is the start of the Second World War. Not saying it's going to get that way, but it's the closest analogy that we have to the level of conflict. And Putin's making a big mistake. He's poking the bear. And when the Ukrainian army and their armed forces survived phase one, and not just survived, they threw fucking Putin back. Yeah. Right? They made gains. Yeah. I predict for phase two, their Russian logistics and training is going to be exposed, even if they come in open country. Hey, it just means they're more spread out so I can kill them easier. The Ukrainians aren't going to be sweating that. So as long as we keep them supplied with man-pads, ATGMs, things that the grunts can use, they don't need a lot of heavy equipment to survive right now and really hurt the Russians. Yeah. Where they need the heavy equipment is for the reconstitution of those forces, because that's how you take Donbas back.
Yeah, and I do believe that the Ukraine needs more help. They need more weapons. They need a little bit more power than this.
Yes.
Yeah, they do.
And if we give them that, but U.S. opinion, let me give you a bit of history, right? The U.S. historically has always had an enemy. When we don't have an enemy, we fight ourselves. Yeah. Okay? Because we're too fucking independent. Right?
I agree.
It's just the way we are. We were ornery fuckers who started this country 200 years ago and don't let anyone ever tell you difference. Yeah. Right? We hated each other like motherfuckers. Yeah. Right? But We all had a greater guiding purpose. But we're at war a lot. War focuses your mind. Okay,
Yeah.
we get out of the Cold War. What do? We got into war with Iraq. We get out of war with Iraq and Afghanistan. What do? Now we start fighting each other. Russia stepped into that void.
Yeah.
We now have our focus because I think a lot more people on both sides of the board support Ukraine than not. And I think the demographic that really vocally says, yeah, I'm all Russia, is declining on a daily basis as they sit back and think, my dad or my granddad is rolling over in his grave right now. Because some of them got to be thinking that because they come from military families.
I agree.
Now, where does China fall into all this? Do you think they align with Putin, or they think they're separate, they're going to stand back and see what happens?
They're learning. They're watching.
They're watching. Yeah, I agree on that. They're watching.
They're reserving their position right now.
They were watching how far Putin was going to get.
Okay.
And that's what China's doing. They're watching how far Putin was going to get.
So to our knowledge, they haven't taken a stance either way.
Yeah. My understanding is they're not supplying lethal aid to the Russians.
Yeah.
Trucks, MREs, shit like that. They're watching.
Right.
If Russia gets beat back hard, it's going to put China back on its heels. If Russia in the end wins, even with an old ground and pound from MMA, right?
Yeah.
It's a win. And then China's going to be looking at Taiwan across the river because now they've pretty much absorbed Hong Kong. And they're going to achieve their strategic objective. And I've always been down on China because we never should have let them into the WTO.
Half of the American people, Colonel, now saying it's not our war. And in my belief, I would love to hear your opinion on it. Half of the American people saying it's not our war. And it looked like if Putin really plowed through the Ukraine and go through the next country, this will be our war and we'll be going to World War III. So if you're afraid of going to World War III, you're pretty much going to go to World War III because by allowing Putin to move through.
Yeah, NATO's going to get activated because the next logical spot is to hit the Baltic states because they're NATO countries. That's why we've quietly put a British brigade, an American brigade, and I'd like to say a German brigade, one brigade in each of the three countries, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, because with a fair amount of certainty, they've got to be next. But they've got to be sitting back smiling because they've been NATO members. And if you don't think they haven't been getting trained the fuck out of themselves by NATO and prepared for this war, just like Ukraine.
We trained the Ukraine. Yep. So it's the same thing.
These guys are trained just like the Ukrainians.
Yeah.
So it's not going to go the way Putin wants, and he just doesn't know it yet. What we really have to see is what's he going to do when he's finally backed in a corner.
So what does he have to do before he takes his next step? Does he have to completely smash Ukraine and occupy Ukraine before he can take his next step?
Well, we have to see if he achieves his strategic objective, which has to be that land bridge between Donbas and Crimea.
Okay.
I think right now, based on what I'm being told by some of my friends, what General Hertling put out the other day, his analysis.
Yeah.
And I believe once the Ukrainians constitute, and I'll tell you, for the first 3 weeks of the war, I was talking to a few of my buddies, and we're tracking the Ukrainian Armored Brigade. Okay? Because they only have one. They have a bunch of mechanized infantry brigades, light infantry brigades, a couple airborne and air assault units. But there's only one tank brigade. Okay? That kept a real low profile until last week when they hit back and took back a lot of freaking land. Mm-hmm. Okay? Now they're reconstituting. Dollars to Donuts says that unit's quietly being filtered with the rest of its units because don't think the Ukrainians aren't thinning out their lines up north and putting their trained the vets down south, because now that they know how fake the Emperor's new clothes are, they're not going to fuck around. They're going to leave enough troops up there to solidly hold it, okay? They're not going to move the wrecks in the roads because why would we? We can drive around them. Let the Russians do it, right? When you're defending, it's always easier, okay? Mm-hmm. But I believe you're going to see potentially a week or two of violence. I don't think the Russian combined army can last more than about 10 to 14 days. Once they kick off, they have not kicked off yet. So we got to see when the rockets rain and the artillery rains and the bloodletting begins. Tick off on your calendar 14 days and we'll see, because that's when they're going to culminate, regardless. I mean, they're going to run out of ammo. They're going to run out of food. They're going to be killed.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's when the Ukrainians are going to attack if they have forces left. And that's what will take back the land bridge and maybe even Donbass and the other region. They're not going to get Crimea back yet. But and Russia will never give it up, not willingly. So
now, given all that,
I think they can restore their antebellum lines.
Given all that, I believe Russian troop morale has got to be really low right now. Do you see a point where Russian troops will go AWOL and leave?
They are.
Or even surrender?
They are.
They are.
Every
They're already
Russian.
broken.
How many Russians are on Instagram? You see them. They're posting it. Hey, Mom, I'm coming home.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
Daily. And those Asian troops coming in, you can bet the commanders are going to take these away from them. They won't have phones.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. They're going to pull the phones away.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's going to get bloody. And this is not the 24 or the 12-hour news cycle, okay? First reports in combat are always wrong. Things take time to kind of shake out. You know, nobody's winning or losing in the first 10
So you
days.
do believe that the brutal fight has not started yet?
Oh, God, no.
Yeah.
Oh, God, no, because when the Asians come in, they're going to cut loose. Because here's what the Russian army does. It's not doctrine, but it's what they do. When they get stopped or they get stymied, if it were you and I, Hamody, we'd figure out a way to fuck those guys up and get out of whatever we were in, right?
Yeah.
No, they throw artillery and rockets at it. They blow the fuck out of it.
Yeah.
That's
Because
what
they don't care
do.
about damage, right? Collateral damage.
Means
No.
nothing to them.
Mean nothing to them. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's why it's going to get bad. But I think it's going to harden the Ukrainians because their population now is like 40 million, 41 million, something like that. It's a lot of people to kill. And you're making a lot of widows, a lot of widowers.
Yeah.
People have lost sons, mothers, fathers. Blood wants blood. And these people are going to want blood. It's just going to firm them up.
Yeah,
You
and it's
know?
been horrible, like rape, all kind of different things, and shooting civilians, killing people, and they're pretty smart with when they do something, they do a reverse psychology thing with their operations. So, like an example, there was a pregnant woman who happened to be a social media personality in one of the hospitals while the hospital got airstriked, and immediately the Russian PSYOP went ahead of the game and said, look, this is an actress. This is someone who works in Instagram. She's a model, and this was all fake. The truth is the woman actually found out that was truly pregnant, was in the hospital, but just goes to show you how the Russians are ahead of the game because they want us to think the way they want us to think about the Ukraine.
Oh. Now, how many civilians have left Ukraine?
A lot. Man, I don't know.
Several million, from my understanding. Several million.
Just Poland alone, I don't know how many people they have
So the
taken.
ones that have stayed, those are the most dangerous ones because they're the ones that want to defend their
Oh, definitely,
homeland.
definitely.
Yeah,
Like they're not really pulling out. They're maybe evacuating their families out, but I can guarantee you they're fighting.
Zelensky put the word out to evacuate the eastern part of the country yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, all non-combatants, get the fuck out.
Go,
Because
yeah.
there won't be another chance. So, yeah, there's going to be casualties. Some people just can't get out for any number of reasons. That's what war does. That's why when you're young, you're all hot-blooded. I can tell you, when I was lieutenant in the Marine Corps, I was all about taking my tank down range and killing me some fucking Russians. Big time.
Yeah.
As you get older and you have friends die and you see what blood really is, you get a little more cold and calculated about what you're doing, and you realize this is serious shit we're talking about. But Putin's a serious guy, and he deserves the most affirmative measures because short of putting U.S. troops in there, and I don't think we have to. You know, I think the Ukrainians are going to do quite well for themselves as long as we keep equipment coming in.
And that's the narrative that they've been that Russian intelligence has been pushing here within our country. We don't want our sons and daughter to die. We don't have to send troops. Nobody has been saying that we need to send American military to fight in the Ukraine. Look at what they're doing to the Russian military. Do you think really?
Tell you what,
Yeah.
I can tell you right now, 10th Special Forces Group Plus is on the ground in Ukraine.
Yeah.
There's no fucking doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
You know, and that's not breaking a secret. That's just not being stupid.
Yeah, it is. And we
there.
use this ideology in Iraq. We use this in Syria. We use this everywhere. So I feel like, you know, how is Zelensky stays alive all this time without any help?
Here's how he did it, okay?
Yeah.
And this may or may not, it could involve a couple organizations, but the Prime Minister of Iraq, while we were in there, was always protected by a SEAL platoon from SEAL Team 6.
Yeah.
Okay, always. They
Yeah.
were his closest protective guards.
Guards, yeah.
It would not surprise me if we have offered him the services of such a team, or
Yeah.
Britain offered him the services of
Yeah.
the 22 SAS.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of what these guys do is
And
personal diplomatic protection.
Zelensky is the heart of the Ukraine,
Yeah.
because that's what Putin wants. He wants to kill him, and
Yeah.
he is the heart. He is the one that keeping it. Because what Putin would do if he kills Zelensky, he will appoint the next guy that works for Putin.
Right.
He did it in Chechnya with Kadyrov.
Now flip that around. What about Putin himself? Do we know if there's been any attempts on his life? Because if he's gone, it stops tomorrow, right?
Yeah, but who? When he tells you that he has surrounded by all these dicks who is scared to say a word. I mean, look, his own spy chief is too scared to say a word in front of him.
Do we know where he is?
I mean, seriously, like the guy is extremely powerful, and he's extremely aware, just like Saddam. How many people could have assassinated Saddam Hussein? It was impossible. It was next to an impossible that you could assassinate Saddam Hussein.
Now,
So
is Putin fortified somewhere, or is he moving around?
he's moving around, but he got himself
Yeah.
secured. He's secured, man. He's really, really secured. And as Colonel Burke said, this guy on his way to become the biggest lord in Europe, and that's what he wants to do.
What prevents us from airstriking Putin?
That we don't know where he is,
Okay.
because seriously, even with precision guided munitions, and I've done this, you got to put a laser on target. And
Yeah.
Putin moves around. He was at the Cosmodrome the other day,
Yeah.
celebrating Yuri Gagarin. He was somewhere else the day before. He was never near the front lines, okay? But he moves between places, not as often as Saddam did, but enough so that it's hard to target him. And that's
Yeah.
what he does. He's a former KGB guy, so he knows about tails.
He knows how to move.
He knows about keeping his exposure low. He's probably got the best Russian special forces team they own as his own personal security.
Now, what about the rumors
You know?
of a dead man switch? Like if someone was to airstrike Putin, if he has a plan to launch missiles or something like that?
Here's what I know, okay? Do you remember START, the strategic arms limitation talks?
Yes.
Back in the 90s, right? 80s, 90s. Reagan put them in place. Well, when our inspectors went in to the missile fields, what they found were that the silos had at least 6 feet of standing water in the bottom of them. These rockets wouldn't have gotten out of the tube.
Oh.
And in fact, the K-129, I think that's the number, the Russian sub that dumped out years ago off Hawaii that we recovered, that was sunk because the stupid fucks lit off a rocket in the tube and it burned out the fucking sub and it sank.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I wouldn't want to be a Russian soldier around one of those things when a soldier or sailor when they're launching because no. And here's the best part. Russian generals aren't stupid. They realize there's going to be an end to this. I think there's a possibility, not a probability or certitude, whatever, but it has to be considered that Russian general with the other key isn't going to turn it. Especially
So
if he's
you're
got the
saying that-
standoff away from Vladimir.
That these missiles that everyone's afraid of that Russia has, they may be just duds, right? If they haven't been maintained properly?
Dude, we were afraid of the T-72 and the T-80 forever until we saw the reality. We learned about the T-72 in Desert Storm,
Yeah.
right?
And how shitty
You know?
they were. Yeah.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
I think the record was 3 of them killed by the same 120 depleted uranium round. Went
Yeah.
through 3 of them like butter. Killed
Yeah,
all
they
the tanks.
plowed through Desert Storm. They plowed through
Yeah.
T-72s.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I got no respect for Russian tanks.
Okay.
And even better, I got no respect for Russian tank crews because as brave as they may be, they don't know how to fucking use their vehicles.
Yeah.
I could kill them by the dozens, and they wouldn't be able to touch me. I don't think they could hit me at 2,000 meters. Any American tank gunner
Yeah,
in the
it makes
Army
sense.
can hit first round hits at 2,000 meters like clockwork. It's the standard, okay? Every 8 seconds, steel on target. Boom, 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 boom. Russians can't do that. Fuck, my longest tank shot, I hit a Connex box in the Marine Corps at 10,000 yards. My longest Sabo shot in an M60A1 Rise passive was 4,000 fucking yards using a stereo optic rangefinder, first round hit.
Yeah.
You think our guys in the M1A2 SEPs aren't going to score? The Ukrainians are scoring kills. The Russian army can't shoot. They rely on volume. And once you start killing their tanks, they don't have tank volume. And it
So
goes to
they're
artillery
just like
missiles.
your typical bully. They just rely on their past reputation, and they really don't have what it takes.
Pretty much, yeah.
And all the people, like you said, around Vladimir, because he fell in the trap. He's surrounded himself with yes men, right? Because people who tell Vladimir the bad news don't hang around Vladimir very long, right? Sometimes very unfavorably. So he gets what he paid for. He's got that staff that came up with an inept plan that couldn't tell him exactly what's happening, and then wouldn't even let him know how bad the Russian army was, because Herdling was saying even the Russian generals knew that they sucked. They just weren't going to say anything. It was their fucking necks on the chopping block.
Yeah. So Colonel, how do we prevent Americans who are literally soaked in this Russian propaganda right now within our country? This is like the front line that are trying to save Americans and convince them that, look, you are being exposed to propaganda. What is the best way of preventing Americans from falling for this Russian narrative?
Well, you can't ever prevent, but you can mitigate. Okay, like in risk. Provide other information. Seek to look at the information that they receive and interact with it. I read an article talking about Pete Buttigieg, right?
Yeah.
And what the reference was, they want Mayor Pete to take over Jen Psaki's job because Pete's never had a crossword with anybody. And every time I've heard him talk, he seems to make some common sense. He's a vet. He served overseas. So, okay, I'll listen to him. And he seems to come across that way. So change your messaging, Joe. Biden, the administration, change your messaging if you want to reach these people.
Yeah.
Look to different ways. And then make sure that there are things that the Dems are going to do that they could or would or should have. But it's all about messaging. Mm-hmm. So we got to get the word out. I got a Ukrainian flag flying in front of my house. Tells everybody that drives by where I'm about. You know?
So what you're saying is somebody should start a podcast called The Black Site Show.
Yeah,
to
pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much. Help expose and educate people, you know?
You know, and that's the point, man. The point is, I decided for myself, which I was telling people, is step out of your political box when it comes to this Russia and Putin and everything that's happening in the world. Not everybody wants the best for you. Mm-hmm. And being so busy going against one another doesn't really work. It doesn't make us stronger, it makes us weaker. And those who are in the far right or in the far left are easy target to fall for foreign agenda because they are so into hating their rival. Man, I got to tell you, when we fought Al-Qaeda in Iraq, Mahdi militias, everybody, even these individuals who we fought in battle, we did not have that much hate for one another. The hate that we have for one another in this country right now is insanity. Mm-hmm. That you started looking at your own Americans as trying to harm you more than Russia and China. You're crazy to think that way, but that's the truth. That's the fact, is that more people are thinking that way. More people consider Americans within their own country are trying to hurt them.
So I think the answer to that is just good information. And I know that you've been planning this podcast for 2 or 3 months now, and we're finally launching it tonight, which is really exciting. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit more about where you envision this going in the next few weeks?
No.
What's your direction you want to go to with the podcast?
I mean, honestly, I think fighting the disinformation, man. I don't think, as Colonel Burke said, they're not bad people. The people that are falling for this, I am not judging them because they are not exposed to information. They don't have the expertise under their belt where we all been to the Middle East. We have fought against an enemy who promotes psyop agenda, who push psychological warfare on us. People are not trained to that level to understand how this works. So we're not mad. We're not angry. We're not calling these people Russian agents. But we try to explain to them, look, the people you follow, you don't know who they are. You don't know who pays them. You don't know, because every single influencer that I searched in the last month or so happened to be owning a nonprofit, happened to be getting donation-based income. And it's crazy to think that the Russian is only tapping into your political rival. Like, your side of the politics is not falling for any foreign agenda. It's always the other side. Mm-hmm. It's insane. Look at the way you're thinking.
Yeah.
And if
and these younger people these days, they believe everything they hear the first time they hear it. They don't consider
it is all repetitive.
You know, when I was in grade school, you'd write a research paper. There was the rule of 3 verifiable sources. Right?
Yeah.
It's not a fact until you know. And now people will just repeat something they hear on YouTube as a fact.
Yeah.
You know, it's kind of scary.
It's scary. And you know what? I used to be against like this fact checking, right? I used to be against it. Like, oh, this is like preventing people from saying their freedom, and this is against freedom of speech. We can't really do this. Until I just saw the war in the Ukraine. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, holy crap, do we really need to stop some people because they're damaging our society?
I don't agree that we should stop them, but we should be able to offer a counter.
And as Col Burke said, is to provide information to the audience to understand how these are not true facts.
Or even expose that.
And I agree.
Like, this is their agenda.
Yeah.
You know, they're saying this.
However, when you distinguish someone who has been pushing nothing but a pure Russian agenda, they should be exposed. And if they get to a certain level where they're affecting the society, where they're affecting 50 million Americans, somehow you have to do something about it. Because we're not doing this in Russia.
Right.
We're not affecting Russians right now, but they can affect us. Right, Colonel?
Yes.
Yeah.
And what we've got to do now is to communicate back to the other side, left to right, right to left. Because what we're not doing, and you said it, is we've drawn that line. We don't talk to each other.
True.
The media now also interplays with that, somewhat knowingly, somewhat not knowingly.
Yeah.
Because I don't think they're intentionally trying to fuck anybody. But people get their news from singular sources from a more diminishing field. So what you need to do, talk to somebody. What you don't do is say, hey, you're wrong, but here's what the truth is. No, what you say is, here's what I believe, and here are the data points that I've looked up or that I've got to back up my point of view, you know, if that helps.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how you get the word out. Because if you attack somebody to present them information, they turn it off right there.
Yeah. You're right. And I think it's really trying to provide information to people that they can look at. I mean, to me, I have talked to a lot of my following who says, hey, man, why do you want to go to war? And I said, I've never mentioned that I want to go to war. But I did mention that Putin needs to be stopped, and we need to support the Ukraine. We need to give them what they need.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that these social media influencers who are pushing this agenda is creating these little anti-missile system where if you say we need to support the Ukraine, they will tell you, well, the Ukraine is a Nazis. The Ukraine is so and so and so. So there's always a block from talking to people. And that's the scary part that scares me, that these influencers are protective. These influencers are tapping into the American people on the daily basis. We're not doing this in Russia. We're not doing this in China. Right. I guarantee you we're not doing this in China. The exposure here in this country is insane, how every American is being affected. And I hate to see that. I talked to a woman personally, myself, who told me that I'd rather have Putin run the United States.
It's crazy.
It's crazy to think that.
Yeah, no, we don't run appropriate programming. And the thing is, it's the nature of the Americans. Most Americans are not bad people. And I mean that in the sense that when you put out propaganda, part of the Merriam-Webster definition is that it causes injury or harm to another party, institution, person, whatever, right? It causes harm. Most people, you know, outside of war, right? We don't want to cause harm to people. Russia wants to harm people. China wants to harm people.
Yeah.
That's the difference. So we have the ability to do some great information operations. We've conducted really nice, great, focused information ops that people don't hear, but we don't do as much as we could, would, or should because, you know, we're not at war with them. And, you know, it goes against the grain of most Americans, you know. Not everybody wants to be G. Gordon Liddy, if you can get the reference.
I would say that most Americans under the age of 35 to 40 right now get the majority of their information and news from social media, not from cable news or talk shows on the radio.
That's true.
So what would you say to those people? Would you just say be very guarded with the information you hear, ask a lot of questions?
Ask questions.
Yeah.
Vet your sources. Don't just listen to one person.
Exactly. Just vet and go through the information, because you're only getting 20% of the truth. Sometimes
Question
you're giving
everything.
even more of the truth, but half of it is not true. Half of it is just to direct you the way they want you to think. And Russia has history within this country, man. Russia has history and success with recruiting people in the highest level within this country. So you really don't think the media personnel or the social media influencer would not bend over to them? I mean, look, they had success recruiting FBI agents. You don't think really how they have the ability to do that? That's the truth.
Well, it all goes down to motivations. But I
Yeah.
can close you out with a neat little fact if you didn't already know it, okay? Remember, going back to the Russian Revolution, okay? Lenin comes in through the train, changed the government. Well, during the White Revolution, the Americans sent 2 Michigan National Guard infantry regiments to Russia.
Yeah.
And they fought with the White Russians against the Red Russians. Stalin never forgot that. Putin learned about it in his history books, and he's never forgotten it either. So America is an ancient enemy for Vladimir Putin in no uncertain terms. End of story.
Wow. And so, like, where do you think? What do you think Putin's next step's going to be?
Phase 2 in Ukraine, baby. He's got the big offensive coming in. He's going to want to see progress. He's going to want to see he's getting his money's worth. And I think that they're going to see a slightly modified version of what happened in Phase 1. Once the Ukrainians absorb the initial assault, because there's a thing called momentum, right? I look at Michael there. I'm sure if he put up a head of steam, I could stop him, but he might throw me back about 8 or 10 or 20 feet while we do it, But he'll go down. That's what Russia's going to do. So they're going to get that mass momentum going and push the Ukrainians back and hurt them bad. But we've seen the Ukrainians have the capability to really just stick it in their freaking eye. Very much so. The fact the Ukrainian Air Force isn't freaking dead now tells me Russia's all fucked. They're going to lose.
Yeah.
I mean, you kill the Air Force. That's the first thing you do. The first thing you do is you kill the fucking Air Force.
Yeah. And I think Ukraine do need some serious weapons to fight this because the air is everything, man.
So, Colonel Burke, you're elected president tomorrow. What do you do first?
Who's elected president? Hamody?
You are.
You are.
What's your first step?
Sit down with the secretary. I sit down, I craft a message saying I am unilaterally for Ukraine. They're not a NATO member. They're not a NATO partner. I'll acknowledge publicly we have no official diplomatic status with Ukraine, but we've got training partnerships going back 20 years with them, so we've developed a history with them. They're more us than they are Russian. As friendly as they are normally on peaceful terms, right?
Yeah.
In this case, it's Hatfields and McCoys, So I'm going to choose a side.
Okay.
And I'm going to give them all the financial support. They were talking about bringing the Defense Production Act in. I don't think they need to, because they need to machine up to make that really work. And that takes months, if not longer. But if you don't think Martin Marietta or whoever makes the Javelin missile and the NLAWs and all that shit haven't ramped up to three shifts a day production, 7 days a week, you'd be kidding yourself. And I'd buy every fucking bit of those, the Star Streaks to kill the Russian aircraft, because the Russian pilots, they don't fly high, so they're well within range of man-pads. Apparently, they're so ill-trained, they fly in singles or pairs to the target and back, straight line. There's no dinking, there's no moving there's no tactics, there's no coordinated attacks. That's why they've been singularly ineffective. You don't need MiG-29s to beat that Air Force. You need man-pads, because they're going to fly right over me. I'm going to shoot them down like we see,
I agree. And I think that's what the Ukraine needs.
Right.
And
get the ATGMs in there and we'll quietly build up the other forces and get them ready for the inevitable Ukrainian offense, which I'm waiting for.
So you think that we can severely help the Ukrainian defensive strategy just by helping equip them better?
Yeah.
Without actually putting U.S. troops over there?
No, absolutely.
We absorb risk and we empty our armories.
Would you put U.S. troops over there?
No, because I grew up during the eras where we had a very real fear of nuclear weapons use, and tactical nuclear doctrine was very specific. We will use it if put into a corner.
Okay.
And I didn't really want to get vaporized by the bomb because I thought it was kind of unfair. If you're going to kill me, choke me out or shoot me or something, Don't make it so impersonal, especially with the other 50,000 people around me. But
and I
it's a
agree.
tricky subject because I know in my gut 90% of what they launch isn't going to cross, And of that, a percentage won't go off anyway because it's fucking Russian technology. But there will be deaths, and with nuclear weapons, you're talking about deaths in the potentially millions.
Yeah.
And 1 million people dead isn't a great percentage of the population of the U.S., right? But if it's New York fucking city or all in one town,
it's a lot of people.
We want to avoid that, and that's why we want to avoid Russian U.S. troops in Ukraine.
Okay.
It would just destabilize the situation. Now, Vladimir wants to put Russian troops in Estonia, Latvia, or Lithuania. We're going to war, and then you'll see American troops in Ukraine because we'll just say, "Fuck it, man. We're going to go Reforger." Guys my age still remember Reforger. We're going to start pumping troops into Germany, follow up with the NATO forces, and beat the living shit out of them in the good weather. Not the season of the mud and not in the winter.
And I agree. I think that Putin needs to be limited. Putin needs to be stopped. And we don't have to send troops, but we can fund the Ukrainian who's doing a great job. Just with the little equipment they have caused them enough damage. And this is for our interest. We got to stop this guy because this guy is insane. He is absolutely insane, and he's on his ways trying to control a whole continent. And it's a lie that they're saying that, he just wants to disable the Ukraine and go back to Russia where he come from. No, he's not. He is on his way to control the continent.
Yeah, here's what I'd like to do now that I've seen the real effectiveness of the Russian army.
Yeah.
I'd like to take the 1st Marine Division with their roll-on, roll-off troops and one of the armored units with their roll-on, roll-off troops, take an aircraft carrier group or two, cruise through the Dardanelles with Turkey's permission, wipe out every Russian plane within 1,000 fucking miles, right?
Yeah.
Then land the Marines and go to town with everybody else and just crush them. Restore the borders pre-Donbas. Don't go into Russia.
Yeah.
Russia has never been good historically as an attacker. They always lose, except for World War II.
As a defender, they can be solid. Yeah.
You don't want to play that game.
Yeah.
But all we want to do is restore the lines either to Donbas, to the antebellum, or get that territory back, which I think is reasonable.
Yeah.
The people in those territories don't like Russia. The propaganda is wrong, and the demographics, not more than 10% of the population in Donbas is pro-Russian.
But even at that, let's say in a perfect world, Russia was pushed back to the border, and everything is restored to peace. They still need to pay for what they've done. They need restitution.
Oh yeah. You brought up sanctions earlier, okay? And sanctions, what are we, 6-8 weeks into the war now?
Yeah.
Something like that. Sanctions take time, okay? We have not enacted cash reconciliation, i.e., the Fed comes out and denies all cash reconciliation transactions from Russia or with a root or a connection to Russia. That's the last financial instrument we haven't locked down. But sanctions take time. That's where I went back to, you got to have patience. Combat may be decided in a day. A battle may last 3 days. A war goes on for as long as you got the willingness to fight.
Yeah. The problem with those sanctions taking time, though, is innocents are still dying every day.
Yeah.
And that is a horrible thing. But if you're a commander and you're thinking, I'm going to base my decision based on civilians, to the extent I can do that, right? Because I don't want him in my line of fire because, it's just stupid. But at some point as a commander, if you got to get down, you got to get down. And that's when things always turn bad. And that's why, we want to avoid that. So send him everything we can. Send him MREs, send him food, water, fuel, weapons. And if the Russians step into a NATO country, we kill them. We kill them fucking all.
Yeah, and I agree.
We do it right. We go to Moscow and we do it right.
And I agree.
Baghdad once, we can do it again.
And I agree.
And we don't have to stay.
And I agree, we really don't, but I feel like the Ukrainians are really doing enough damage. They just need a little support. And we don't have to send our sons and daughters as the Russian propaganda has pushed within this country. That's not what it is. We just need to support the Ukrainians, and they will cause them enough damage because, look, this is a Fallujah style, and the Russians are losing a lot of money. And somehow the Russians are not going to be able to continue to lose. Somehow they're going to retreat, and they're going to go back to where they come from. And we need to push them back. Good. We need to tell Putin that we are not just going to turn our back and let him do what he has to do. This is bigger than just our politics. This is bigger than Republican Democrats. This is a lot bigger than we think it is. And we cannot let this guy go any further, regardless. And I will stand behind anybody. I'll stand behind anybody right now in the side of politics that's willing to stop Putin, regardless who it is. Do something about Putin, I'll support you through it.
That sounds like a good place to wrap up the show, you think?
Yeah.
Colonel Burke, do you have any last words?
Hey, go Ukraine. Those guys are going to go down in history as real tough guys. We are seeing an epic fight here, and I hate to be gleeful with all the people who are going to die, but the fact is the Ukrainian army is going to give Vladimir Putin and the Russian army not just a bloody nose. They're going to kick the living shit out of him. And he's got it all coming. So, more to come.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here with us on the show. And we are looking forward for our next episode. And we are going to be working hard and getting more little bit topics and getting into this. Colonel Burke, thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you, everybody. Our producer, Brett, today for his help. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, just go ahead and subscribe, and you'll be able to see our next episode. We can't wait to be here with you again.